Hi, I'm Sky from Sunny Girl Cakes, and today I'm going to show you how to make a quick sugar peony. The reason it's a quick sugar peony is because I'm not going to wire any of the petals. I'm just going to show you my way of doing it. So what you'll need, lots of little things today. Ball tool, pizza cutter, a peony cutter, which has 3 different sizes, styrofoam ball, a 24 gauge wire, some brushes, some flour paste, a little bit of water, corn flour, rolling pin. Use a little bit of this plastic to cover over a flour pad, and I've got 2 drying apparatuses. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is take out my flour paste and give it a bit of a knead so that it softens up. I'm going to add some corn flour to the bench so that it doesn't stick. If you're going to make a coloured flour, I would add the colour to the flour paste now. So now I'm going to roll the flour paste out, and we want it to roll out quite thin. We want thin, delicate petals. It can take some work to get it nice and thin. You want to get the sugar paste to a point where it's almost see-through. So I'm happy with that. I can see my hand through there, so it's quite thin. Now I'm going to cut out 8 petals in with the larger cutter. I'm going to pop them straight onto my flour pad. I'm doing these first because these are going to be left to dry, and these are going to be my filler petals, I call them. Okay, so 6, 7, 8. So the ones that I'm not working on, I'm going to put underneath this plastic so they don't dry out. I'm going to put the rest of the flour paste away so it doesn't dry out also. So working with my ball tool now, I'm going to frill these petals. Using the ball tool, I'm going to apply pressure to the side of the flour paste to create a ruffled edge. I'm going to do it quite ruffled down the sides. I'm going to put my ball tool half on the edge of the paste and half onto the flour pad. Once I've ruffled around the edges and around the top, then I'm going to give it some ruffle through the middle and help it to curl up. Then I'm going to put that aside over here to dry. Again, ruffling down the edge to give it a really pretty ruffle, and then ruffling around the top, and then some ruffle through the middle. It helps them to curl up when you do that little bit through the middle. The pressure that I'm applying is quite hard, but you'll find out if it's too hard because you'll tear the flour paste. So I've almost done all 8, and what I'm going to do is let them sit there and dry while I do the rest of the flour. So the next thing I'm going to do is start with the centre of my peony. I'm going to take my 24 gauge wire, and I'm going to use a styrofoam ball. I find if I use a styrofoam ball, then the peony is light and it's easy to apply to the cake. There's different sizes you can get, so it's really up to you about what size you decide to use. Now I'm going to pop the wire through the centre of this ball and hope it pops out the other side. Okay. Once it's about, I get it to the middle, and then I'm going to drag it down to the bottom, and then I'm going to twist it around itself. And then when it's about that long, will be fine, so I'm going to twist that bit back up and around itself again. Just makes it a little bit stronger at the base. Now we're going to cut out the small petals. So I'm going to do 4 with a smaller cutter. And while I'm here and I've got the paste rolled out, I'm going to do 7 with a middle size cutter. I'm going to create the ruffles the same as I did on the big petals on the small petals. And this time with these ones, I'm actually going to turn them over and I'm going to ball tool the back so they curl back. Really wet and soggy. I just want enough water so that they stick. So we'll put a little bit of water on the backs of these petals. And the first one is going to go across the middle pretty much. And then the second one is just going to go there. So we just want it to kind of meet in the middle. And then this one, this one is here. So we've created a centre for our peony. So we'll just let them sit and dry. And I'm going to ruffle the medium-sized petals. If you're finding that your ball tool is sticking to the petal, it could be that the humidity is increased in your kitchen, or that perhaps you just need to put a little bit of corn flour on the end of the ball tool. So I'm working as quickly as I can so that the petals don't dry out. Okay. So now we can add these to our styrofoam ball. Again, we're going to use water, not too much, just a little bit. You need it to stick, so you don't want to underdo it, but you don't want a soggy flour. Otherwise it's going to take too long for it to dry. Alright, so I'm going to work my way around the flour and starting pretty much at the base and pressing them on, making sure that it's sticking when I'm pressing them on. Then I'm going to overlap the next one. So this one's actually going to sit over the last one. And turning it around. Same thing. You can see that it's starting to form into a flower at the top. I want to make sure that I'm covering all of the styrofoam ball. So if there's a little bit of styrofoam ball you can see, then you can just lift that petal up a little bit higher. Make sure that it covers over. And we're almost around to meet at the other side. It can be a little bit fiddly and tricky, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be right. Practice makes perfect. If they're not too wet, then you can actually lift them back off, but if they're too wet, then they're going to stick and stay there forever. And you don't want wet hands either, so otherwise you're going to be stuck to the flower. Okay, so I've got to the last one, and I'm going to overlap that one, and I'm going to try and tuck that one under there so it's overlapped as well. The sides here have started to drop off a little bit, so what I'm going to do is just make sure they're secure. So I'll just add a touch more water to make sure that they actually stick to the flower. Okay, you can also grab them with your hands and make sure they're curling up. Next, I'm going to hang them, so that way they're going to dry hanging down that way. I'm going to hang it over on this little lovely drying tool and let that dry. So this is the one I prepared yesterday, and you can see that that's dried, and they're all hanging in that beautiful direction, and they look like they've got life about them. They're not dying. So the next thing I'm going to do is cut some large petals to add to the flower that I've let dry overnight. When making sugar flowers, it is a good idea to use flour paste because it has more of a stretch, and then you'll get thinner, more floaty kind of petals. So this time I'm going to cut out 9 large sized petals, and then I'm going to trim the bottoms off them to make them a little bit shorter. This is to create a texture within the flower. It takes a little bit of hard work to get the flour paste out to the right consistency. Okay, so that thickness looks good. I'm going to cut out the 9 large petals. And I'm just going to pop them underneath this plastic so they don't dry out. You can use a veiner tool to add veins to your petals. It does give it more of a realistic look, but today we're doing a quick sugar flower. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So now I'm going to cut the bottoms off these petals, just this much. And again, I'm going to frill them like I did with the smaller ones. But in this case, I'm actually going to give them a fold at the base and pinch them, and that's going to add texture to our petal. So by the time you've finished the last petal, the first petal's had a bit of time to sit and start to form. So I'm going to take the flour that I've left dry overnight that's already set hard, and we're going to add these next shorter petals to that. So because it's already set and it's hard, I can actually sit it down on this flour pad, and without putting any force on it, I know that those little petals aren't going to squash. I'm going to add some water to my petals that I'm going to place on this flower. Okay, I'll start with the first one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it closer to the base, and I'm not going to press down on my flower, or otherwise chances are I'm going to break off some of these beautiful petals here. I'm going to put that at the base there. So what it's going to do is it's going to give it a different layer of texture. So when I go to put the petal on, I'm lifting my flower up off the flower pad so that I'm not pressing down on those and breaking those petals. But I do need to press firmly so that the petal will stick to the flower. So I'm going to keep working my way around, overlapping each one, and you can see that's creating a really pretty texture already. One. I do love making sugar flowers. It's very satisfying to see the result. So I'm just looking at where I'm at as I'm putting them on. I've got sort of 3 left, and I could probably shift those ones over a little bit closer to one another. Because I've still got 3 more to put on. And we're almost round to the start. Back to the hour. Just gently holding it, and you can see that we've got a layer of texture happening there. So now I'm going to let that dry again for a little bit before I add the next layer of petals. So now I'm going to cut out 9 more of the large size petals, and this is going to be my last layer that I'm going to add to the flower. So I'm going to ruffle these petals the same as I've ruffled the other ones. So when I first looked at the sugar peony, I thought there's no way I can create that, but I've had a go and I've been able to do it. It's just about trying and having a go. And when you break it down to step-by-step instructions like I've given you today, it makes it simple. Okay, so now I've ruffled all those petals, I'm going to add them to my flower. It is best if you can leave your flower to sit overnight before you put it on your cake, because then it gives all the petals an opportunity to dry in the right direction. So again, I'm going to take my flower and I'm going to pop it gently on my board, ensuring that I don't break any of those beautiful petals underneath. A little bit of water and add it to the bases of each petal. And just as I did before, I'm going to take 1 petal at a time and place it on. Now what I like it to do is it to hang a little bit lower. So if you start a little bit further out, you're going to get more of an overhang. So I'm not going right back to the base like I did before. I'm still pressing it down. So then turning and adding the next petal. I'm just adding and then checking that they're sort of sitting nicely. And almost back around to the start. So if I can, I'll try and tuck that last one under the first one. Okay, so I'm going to try and press that down. It's getting quite heavy now. Okay, so to give you a bit of an idea of what that looks like, I will try and flip it up. And you can see we've got a beautiful big flower. So what I want to do now, let's not break it, is I want to leave that to dry overnight. That way all those little wet edges of the petal will dry and it'll be secure, and you know you're not going to lose any petals. So we've let the peony dry now for a little while. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish it off and add it to our cake. So I'm going to let it rest here. And what I want to do now is add some flower tape to this wire. I'm going to fold it over on itself again, because I don't need it to be quite that long. And I'm just kind of squeezing it together. Okay, now I'm going to take some flower tape. And this can be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to wrap it around the wire, kind of on top of itself. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get started. And I'm just spinning the peony between my fingers and rolling that tape up. You sort of give it a pull and then it helps to stick. And as you can see, I'm covering the wire in the floral tape. I just feel a little bit more comfortable about the wire being covered with the tape before it goes into the cake. When you feel like it's covered and you're happy with that, you can go back down again. You don't want to make it too thick though, otherwise it won't fit into the straw that I'm going to use. Okay, I've torn that off and I'm just going to cut it. Now I'm going to work out where I want to put the peony on my beautiful cake. I'm thinking that it should sit about here, off centre a little bit. So I'm going to put my straw in here and insert that into the cake first. Take my scissors, lift it up a little bit, pinch it, cut it off, and then press that back down into the cake. Now the reason I do that is because I don't like to insert the wire directly into the cake. And this way, the straw is protecting the cake. It's also got somewhere for the wire to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the peony up to the right way and pop that in there and very gently press it down. You don't want to put any pressure on any of those beautiful petals or you could break them. Now that looks pretty just sitting there on its own, and we could secure that down. But what I'm going to choose to do next is add some filler petals. Earlier we made some filler petals and we let them dry, and I'm going to pop them in around the edges of the flower to really bulk it out. I'm going to put a little bit of royal icing just underneath the base of the peony so that it secures to the cake. I'm pressing it down, and when I'm pressing it down, I'm pressing on the styrofoam ball rather than any of those gentle petals. Next, I'll take a little bit of royal icing and pop it on the corner of one of these filler petals and on the bottom so it can stick to the cake. And what I'm going to do is work my way around and just see where I can fit them in to give it a little bit more depth. So I've just popped one in there and it's just going to secure with that icing, and I can have a look and see if I can get one under here as well, which I think would be nice. I'm going to try not to see any of that icing. What I'm going to do, I might get a brush and just get remove some of that icing. So we might not use all these filler petals, but I'd just like to make about 8 of them so that I've got them on hand, just in case you break one or something. It's known to happen. Pop these ones in here. So that royal icing will set really hard and they won't go anywhere. So I haven't used them all, but I'm happy with how many leaves there are there, and I think they're set in place and they're secure. They're not going anywhere. The last thing I'm going to do is just give it a quick pearl spray to add that real shimmer and glamour. And just have a last check to make sure that I can't see any excess icing. And I can see some around the back here. So I just want to take that off with my brush. And I think that's done. So I hope you like my quick sugar peony, and now following my steps, I hope that you will be confident to have a go at it. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to colour some fondant, how to make a fondant bow, and also how to add some decorative pieces to a fondant finished cake. For photos of my beautiful designs, please check me out on Instagram at sunnygirlcakes and also on Facebook.